Hey, what's going on, guys? Xbox on the channel, host Sega Forever here. Sorry I haven't been doing the videos on my channel. I know there's a lot of stuff going on with Xbox, a lot of stuff that I want to talk about. I'll probably do a podcast for this channel just to catch everybody up on everything, at least give my thoughts on all the stuff that's going on, especially with the Activision Blizzard deal. Right now, I've been covering out my channel kind of sparingly. Like, I mean to do videos, guys, but just other stuff comes up. Like, I was sick the last couple days. Seems like my fever is broken and I'm finally getting over it. That's why I'm doing this video right now. Um, but I tell you that also to, sorry if my voice sounds off or the volume. I'm not trying to maintain at least decent level with my voice so that you guys can understand what I'm saying. And again, the background noise as I'm doing this, man, it's hot and humid in Hawaii where I live. And so I got the fan on. So I can't turn it off, dude. I'm already not feeling well, so. And the humidity here is just evil. And then of course you got the dog barking, the usual stuff. So if you hear that, I do apologize. But just really quickly, man, I want to jump into this because, as you know, with the Activision Blizzard deal, there's so much stuff going on between the regulators, Xbox, PlayStation. But the funny thing to me is, like, I hear a lot of people on the Xbox side saying that, these two companies are going back and forth. The only person I see stressing is Sony. And I say that because you can tell that they're fighting hard to keep this purchase for some reason to keep this purchase to stop it. And I know they have their bottom line. I know it's kind of a business thing, but again, what you're seeing is just Sony being the pricks that they are. Hat tip to my boys. You got the world's most powerful gamers. Everybody in my circle that I mess with, man, Sega Man, E-Rock X, Unlimited. Definitely shout out to Mr. 100. He did a great podcast today. Go check out his channel. Where he talks about stuff in detail when it comes to the ABK Activision Blizzard purchase. But yeah, dude, I mean, dude, what you're basically seeing is something that we've known all along. Guys like myself and my circle of friends and stuff like that. That we've been dealing with Sony for the longest time, so it's not surprising to me. It is a little bit funny to see like Sony play the victim and their fans play the victim. That's kind of a new thing in this current console generation that we have yet to see. They've been walking around with all that swagger, saying how powerful Sony is, their AAA powerful games, and with just Microsoft actually supporting Xbox and putting some money behind something that is actually their brand to be competitive, you see all their narratives fall apart, which I've been covering on this channel, and it's been amazing to see. But for guys that are watching this, I see a lot of people comment. I've been trying to, like I said, I haven't been doing videos, but I've been trying to keep up. And I've been actually watching people that I normally don't, and checking out media that I normally don't check out, like Paul Tassi. I really don't read a lot of his stuff. Um, and I know he does videos and stuff like that, but as far as his takes on a lot of things like gaming, yeah, I don't really agree with them. But I use this article because it's actually pretty cool. Or at least it serves the purpose of me getting my point across. So, I'll give a shout out since he is the writer of this. But yeah, so I have been trying to keep up with all the news. So, if you want a wide swath of everything that's going on, and I won't talk about anything specifically in this video, but I'll definitely cover it in the weeks to come because it's just been entertainment to me. I mean, it's funny because I see a lot of people in the Xbox community, um, going back and forth on a lot of stuff. Narratives are changing with them as well. Um, and it's just interesting. It's just entertaining, like I said, to watch. And what's even more entertaining is how people change so quickly when it comes to this acquisition. And I maintain stuff on this video um, that I maintain on other videos on my channel as far as consistency. Um, the regulation that came through on the Brazilian side with Cade. Oops, sorry, guys. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's very noisy. Um, with Cade actually supporting Microsoft. Now, I will say this much. I said in my previous video I don't like regulators, and that's for good reason. Um, the conclusion that Cade came to when it dealing specifically with this purchase, though, I thought was spot on. Because first and foremost, they're looking at their consumers. Right now, everybody's losing their mind with, I can't remember the name of the regulatory, I can never remember the, anyway, when Britain's regulatory agency is looking at the purchase of AKB, you see that they're taking a different type of look at the situation, which I feel is totally wrong. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's nephew Jim Ryan's nephew actually works at this place. I mean, it's just a really bad look with a lot of the stuff that they're coming out with, a lot of the concerns. I won't go into detail about that. But the reason I was talking about that in my video prior to that is because there's a lot of bias involved with this. I think Cade was probably the most, there's a little bit of bias there, but ultimately the justification for their findings is the bottom line. The bottom line is for the consumers, which they actually not only stated, but when you read their body of work, which I have read, and you can see the points that they're trying to make, and it's consistent. Now, when you switch over to the British authorities and what they're talking about, it's interesting to me because with the Cade points that they brought out in their documentation, and when you juxtapose it with the actual regulators in Great Britain, you see there's a definitive where, the Brazil authorities are actually looking at the consumer, and when you read what the UK guys are doing, it actually looks like they're looking towards Sony as a company, as opposed to their actual consumers, which I find very interesting. But like I said in my video, this is why I can't stand regulatory agencies. Period. They're usually filled with a bunch of people that find themselves a little bit too important. I think there's a time and place for regulatory stuff. But if you look at what they do to, for most bodies that wield authority and power, when there's a need for them, there's a need for them. But when there isn't a need, they shouldn't exist. And one of the problems with these type of bodies is they have to justify their existence. And when they do that, they make themselves more important than what they really are. Because if you just, the basic person, even the guys on the Sony side, they might not like it, dude. And you can tell because they never argue the points, right? They just argue. They're more emotional when it comes to this. This is how you know that they're wrong, right? But they won't argue the points, man. They just argue around the issue, right? And that's just go on Twitter or Facebook. You'll see it in droves, right? Because they can't argue those points. And that's kind of like the argument that the British regulatory agency actually brought forward. So anyway, so I know a lot of you guys who are not up to speed on this that are just getting involved in it. There's a lot of YouTubers that are actually talking about this, which I find interesting because they don't really cover gaming, or they cover gaming from a slant perspective that I talk about on my channel ad nauseum. But yeah, a lot of these guys, look, it's news, so they're doing it. They might play games, they might not, I don't know. But I know a lot of people are coming into this looking at why Sony's fighting so hard. I mean, because this goes beyond the pale. From a lot of the stuff that's being exposed online, right? They're going the extra mile to make sure that this deal doesn't end. And there's a lot of people who are trying to break it down and see why. For me personally, I know because it'll hurt them financially, right? It could hurt them as far as their user base, right? Because and I can say this as an Xbox guy because it's a very powerful lesson that Microsoft learned with the 360. 360 was known as the shooter box, and they didn't qualify the Call of Duty brand the way Sony did in the next console generation because everybody associated Call of Duty with Xbox, right? Like how they associate Halo with Xbox. I mean, people to this day, like myself, knows that's how it was. But something funny happened with the PlayStation 4, where Microsoft learned a valuable lesson that a lot of they didn't really have fans or brand loyalty. A lot of these people jumped ship and went to where Call of Duty was on PlayStation because they would get all the perks, stuff like that, and get all the stuff released early. And of course, the hypocrisy with Sony, right? Because they took that even a step further with qualifying with Activision and making things specifically for the console, which they fail to ignore, right? Which they choose to ignore in all of this, even though they're trying to lambast Microsoft on it. So we see the hypocrisy and stuff like that. But for a lot of people, they're wondering why they're fighting so hard. Why are they putting in all this stuff? And the funny thing to me is when I read this article right here, it's basically Sony. The reason they're doing this kind of stuff and trying to paint Microsoft in a bad light, because as a Microsoft guy, I mean, me, Keybot, the people that are on, really dialed into Microsoft, and we have our community of people online that are dialed into Microsoft. We understand that Microsoft isn't like Sony, right? They're actually trying to be the good guys. And we say this, and me specifically, I say this because it bothers me a lot that they do that. I mean, hopefully after all of this stuff going on, Microsoft sees how Sony really is. And I've known Sony, I mean, I'm a Sega dude, man. I mean, we've been dealing with Sony back since the 90s, man, and all the stuff that they've done. I'm not a stranger to it, dude. And I'm telling you, me and guys like Eba, we don't even have to Google this or look it up, or like a lot of people now that are gamers are coming into this, like, they're like, oh wow, I didn't think Sony was like this. I mean, guys like us, we knew how Sony is, man. They've always been this way, man. Because they don't look at this as being as showing them weakness or bullying or stuff like that. They look at this as their bottom line, and they look at this as this is how they do business, right? And hopefully this will wake Microsoft up, because you see Microsoft, responding to this, and there's people out there saying, yeah, they're coming hard. No, they're not. They're still they're responding. The only people, like I said, losing their mind is Sony, and then Microsoft is just responding. Now I know the latest response that they have was a little bit more than they actually do, but I hope Microsoft takes it to that next level now and realize what kind of company Sony is, the fight that they're in. Sony do whatever they can, and their fans as well will make up any excuses for them, right? Because they're just about the brand, not really about gaming. And for a company like Microsoft, who's actually concerned about gaming and keeping the history of gaming, as well as with all the digital rights and stuff like that, it would be in their best interest to start looking at Sony as the enemy, because they're for all the stuff that Microsoft wants to do. And Microsoft, let me tell you, they have a mean streak to them, right? But their mean streak usually tends to be with stuff where they find it has to be like they have to have that moral righteous background, right? I mean, they have their morals and their principles, right? And you've seen it flash from time to time, right? Where they'll take stuff if it's like I say this and it pisses a lot of people off. Just be honest, man. They white knight for stuff. They have causes that they believe in, and if those causes feel threatened, that's when you see Microsoft actually step up and become the behemoth that they really are. If you don't believe me, man, look at what they did with Russia. They shut off everybody's pipeline. Again, when I said in a previous video that might have been security issues because Microsoft does throw a lot of stuff with the government, but some of the stuff that Microsoft will do um, fits that MO of white knighting. So the reason why I'm kind of strong on Microsoft getting Activision, I haven't said this before, I'll just say it on this video, is because of the culture that's over at Activision, or what Microsoft perceives as the culture. If you notice when Phil talks about that, the toxic culture that everybody's like to talk about. Look, I don't work at Activision. I don't know what's really going on. For some of the stuff that I hear, it kind of surprises me that, the type of games that they make, and I'm not making excuses if there's toxic stuff going on. I just don't know. But just the type of company they've always been, and the content that they make, it has surprised me that it's kind of a boys club, right? So if you have new people coming in and a new generation of developers and stuff like that, I see where that can be a problem. Um, but if you look at Phil's reaction when it comes to Activision and toxicity and stuff like that, he gets a little bit serious, man. I mean, just look at his expression, his body language tells you a lot of stuff. I mean, he does not like this stuff. I mean, just recently they were in Tokyo, and they were talking to Phil Spencer. They were on an interview at Sarah Bond there. For me personally, I would have liked to talk. If I was interviewing, I would interview Sarah Bond more. But Phil kind of they kept on asking Phil questions, and then Phil says, "Hey, let's get Sarah involved." That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That Microsoft, if you really want to get on their bad side, or if you really want to, see them, if you want to see their ugly side, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. They have their things that they don't like. Trust me, I see it. And so, and me personally, when I look at that, it's not that they trying to slight Sarah Bond, or there's opinions of Japanese culture and being male dominant and stuff like that. They just don't know Sarah Bond. There's people in the Xbox community that didn't know Sarah Bond. I personally like Sarah Bond. I think she's doing an excellent job. I think she's awesome. I think she's going to be the heir apparent, and for good reason, man. She's really a gamer. She's basically she comes from old school. I know she's not as old as gamers like myself and stuff like that, but she has that pedigree. I like to use that word a lot. She talks about games a lot. She has a history of gaming, and she loves to game, right? And she has the personality and the business acumen to make all these deals and to deal with people on both the business and the professional level. So to me, it's a slam dunk if she takes it to the next level. For a lot of these people, politically, I don't agree with them. I'll be honest. For a lot of the stuff that they do, whatever, but they do produce a good product, and they are putting the games first and the gamers first. And like I said in my previous videos, I talked about this for people like how the UK authority is worried about how Microsoft is going to shut everything down. Um, for all of that talk and stuff like that. I mean, if Microsoft ever gets that way, they could. I'm not saying they can't, but if they ever get that way, then of course I'll go against them. right? That's not hard for me but for right now, what they're doing, there's no other industry, there's no other company pushing the industry forward. There's no other company pushing this industry in what I feel is the right direction. No other company is thinking outside the box that Microsoft is doing. And as you can easily see that with the emphasis they put on indie games and Game Pass and trying to save for the consumers and the developers and also make some coin too, right? Which is ultimately why I believe this stuff is not going to fail, right? But I mean, for me personally, for those of you guys asking why Sony's doing this and accusing Microsoft of doing all this kind of stuff, you can just use their own words, right? Microsoft would be able to give the Xbox version of Call of Duty extra content. Microsoft could give the Xbox version of Call of Duty better performance somehow on Xbox hardware, which I could do a separate video on this right here because we've been talking about it again to Heba, E-Rock, Unlimited, Sega Man, Tuckmaster, Mr. 100, dude, Microbox of X. Right? A lot of us have been talking about this for years that were attacked online, about parody and stuff like that. There you go. This is a video for another day. This is a podcast for another day. Microsoft could offer a range of attractive incentives about Call of Duty through Xbox Game Pass, whether that's bonus feature or modes, or presumably the idea that they offer the game itself through Game Pass, which they obviously plan to. Okay, so this is how you know. This is funny to me because this is Sony telling on themselves because this is exactly what Sony would do if they could afford to buy Activision Blizzard. The reason why you see Sony fighting so hard to put an end to this deal is because all the stuff they accuse Microsoft of doing, they themselves would do. And in a lot of instances, they are doing it right now, just not on that grand scale that Microsoft. You know what it is? It's just like the guy who cheats on his girl, right? And then the girl forgives him, and they're still together. And then every time the girls go out with her friend, or there's some dude from work that calls about something, or she might have a guy friend, that dude will be like paranoid because he did the dirty, and so he thinks she's gonna do it to him. This is what you see with Sony, man. This is how evil this company is. And like I said, man, I mean, look, I'll do a podcast and we'll talk about this ad nauseum and in detail because Sony is absolutely the most evil company. And again, this is why I want Microsoft. Hopefully, they realize who they're dealing with now. They really need to put these dudes in their place. I personally think they should just smack them down and just end them. I think Microsoft should just make these people a third party developer, like what they did with Sega. Like what Sony did to Sega, Microsoft should do with Sony. Because these dudes are just going to constantly be nipping on their heels. With all the concessions, Microsoft talks about it, about what they were trying to do with PlayStation. Like they said they were going to put Game Pass on PlayStation, which I will say this, I think that was more of a 4D chess move for situations like this. Because there's no way that PlayStation would have done that deal anyway. And to be honest with you, I don't think that would have been good for PlayStation to do anyway. So, but again, Microsoft, come on, man, just cut the apron strings, right? Let these guys go, right? Because they're going to be an albatross around your neck. They're going to drag you down. You're going to constantly have to cater to them, which is another reason why I don't want Game Pass on there. I don't want any of the games on there, right? Because Microsoft, as Sony said themselves, man, with the performance thing, Microsoft is pushing in a whole new direction. And this is great to see Sony say it because this is how I want Microsoft to do, man. I want next generation games on next generation hardware. I want all the stuff and all the bells and whistles, right? I was really excited to play Starfield this year, but of course it got delayed. One of the reasons, I never really talked about it, but one of the reasons it doesn't bother me that it got delayed is because of this right here, man. I want a version of Starfield that feels next generation. Now, if they do that, that's more on the Bethesda side, but this is the kind of thing, with all the time and energy and money that Microsoft is putting into their ecosystem, this is what I want to see, dude. I want to see games that take full advantage of the hardware and that push the envelope. And with Sony saying this, man, Sony is, it doesn't look good for them, dude. So what Sony needs to do, I'll give them some advice. Sony needs to step up their game. That's just the bottom line. And with them whining and stuff like that, it just, whatever little respect, well, I never had respect for Sony, but whatever little respect I had is gone. It's absolutely 100% gone. And Microsoft needs to end these guys. But they need to not be. Sony doesn't need to be the leader in the console generations to come, or in gaming in general. They should happily take second fiddle to Microsoft hell, I think third fiddle to Nintendo, right? Because they're just not they don't bring anything new to the table. They haven't brought anything new to the table. All they cling to is their AAA games, which ain't serving them anything right now, right? Because they put their eggs in one basket because they're psychotic fans as well, and so that's costing them right now. They're paying the price, and it's not up to the regulatory agencies, no matter what country they're from, to be gatekeepers of this kind of stuff, dude. This is what kills tech, right? This is why, again, man, small government. Small government is the way to go on anything. Because there's a lot of people out there. What if all this kind of stuff happens? What if they become the evil empire? All this kind of stuff. Yeah, they could be, right? But what's even worse is if the government gets involved, because you can actually change stuff. There's things you can do. I know it's hard for people to understand this, but it happens. It's happening right now in pop culture with all the crap that they're doing in pop culture. Man. People are getting tired of it, and people are spending their money other places, right? And at its core, gaming and pop culture in general, dude, it's generated, it's run on revenue, right? Now you can have a big company backing, but they can only do that for so long. You see that all over the world right now with the economies. This is why inflation is high, right? The money's just not there. With all the bailouts and all the COVID crap and stuff like that, the money is just not there. The capital is just not there, and you need that kind of stuff to invest, to grow, to push boundaries. And Microsoft's the only one doing it in gaming. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. Again, I'll try and put some more videos together. I'm kind of doing on this at the moment. Actually, my throat is actually pretty good. I thought I'd have a hard time stop this video and have to do it about 100 million times. But anyway, let me know what you guys think down below, man. I mean, it's obvious that Sony is in a difficult position right now, and when they're looking at their future, because they've made the wrong choices to get to the point where they are today. It's an uphill battle for them. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'll be honest with you. I don't care if they I don't really care. Win or lose, I mean, it's just time for Microsoft to move beyond them. And that's why I would like to get this thing done as soon as possible, because Microsoft has real things to deal with Activision Blizzard, man. I mean, I talked about this on the other video as well. I just reiterated a little bit, the Overwatch thing, things going on with Call of Duty. And I'm not even talking about the stuff in the background. I'm just talking about as a game, as games in a service, as a game that has a certain amount of followers and a certain type of fan base. Right? Hopefully they can learn from the things that they did with Bethesda, and bring that change that Activision needs, not just for the culture and stuff like that. There, whatever, fine, but it's specifically for the business end and specifically for the content, because that content's going to matter. Anyway, Xbox Online channel, host Sega Forever, we out.